evening, distinguished guests all. Pleasure to have everyone here. For those of you that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Bob Moody, and I'm Director of the School of Public Administration here at the Faculty of Management at Dalhousie University. What a wonderful treat it is to see this classroom full, and we have another classroom almost full for our overflow, so this is wonderful. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you here this evening to the inaugural lecture of Her Honor, Dr. Mayann Francis, the School of Public Administration's first Distinguished Public Service Fellow. It's a very special occasion marked by some very distinguished guests, some of whom have traveled a long way to be here on Mayann's very special night. Please help me in joining from our Halifax academic community, the President of Mount St. Vincent University, Dr. Ramona Lumpkin, the President of the Nova Scotia Community College, Mr. Don Barreau, the President of the Atlantic School of Theology, Reverend Neil Bennett, and the President of our own Dalhousie University, Dr. Florazone, and I understand Dr. Florazone is en route, so as our President will excuse him being Dr. Wanda Thomas Bernard, Special Professor, Dal Professor, and Special Advisor on Diversity and Inclusiveness, as well as Chair of the Nova Scotia Advisory Council on the Status of Women. Also here tonight with us from the judicial community are J. Michael McDonald, Chief Justice of the Court of Appeal, and Beverly K. Smith, Associate Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada. So welcome to everyone, and it's a wonderful night. And a special tribute from those who traveled all the way from Oakfield, also from Whitney Pier to be with us here. Many more here tonight, friends, family, members, colleagues, devoted students, faculty, and fans. We're all here to honor the journey that Dr. Francis has been on and to share in the wisdom and insights that journey has afforded her. I also wish to extend fond greetings to the audience located in the overflow classroom just down the hall from us, watching the live stream of these proceedings, which are being beamed around the world via the wonders of the web.
You're global.
And neither Dr. Francis nor myself completely understand how that's being done. We trust in those with us tonight who are much more knowledgeable. So thank you. I would like now to introduce our Master of Ceremonies for this evening, Mr. Tom Murphy. Tom is the anchor for CBC's TV, Nova Scotia News, and the Maritimes National Correspondent for CBC News. Tom has reported on stories as far-reaching as the Moncton RCMP shootings, Hurricane Juan, all the way to space shuttle landings and visits by British royalty to Canada, which is possibly when he came into first contact with Dr. Francis during her years as Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia. So without further ado, I turn the podium over to Tom, who will introduce our speaker, as well as tell you more about the evening's proceedings. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Dr. Moody. It is indeed a pleasure to be here this evening. Good evening to you all. It is an honor, really, to be invited to be the MC for this event. He mentioned when was the first time I met Mayann Francis. It was in your role as Lieutenant Governor at a school in East Hants. You may not remember it. You made probably hundreds of school visits over the course of that part of your career. I remember the black car pulling up front with the driver and this very regal woman stepping out. She really fit the role. And I know the students would have enjoyed their time with you that day, as I'm sure we all will here tonight. For those of you joining us via the the live stream broadcast, as we call it. I invite you to pose your questions via Twitter using the hashtag AskMayann. And there will be a Q&A session after all of this is over. So we're inviting you to all get your questions ready. There'll be a microphone that'll make its way around the room, and you can pepper her with some questions. She says she's willing to take all questions, so keep those in mind. Tonight we are indeed fortunate, for we are about to hear a life story that should be an inspiration not only to every Nova Scotian, but to anyone with a passion for public service. It is the tale of a journey that begins in the Cape Breton community of Whitney Pier and winds its way through a life dedicated to public service, marked by accomplishments that have broken new ground for African Nova Scotians and women. This journey was brought her to this current role here at Dalhousie University, where she has been appointed the first Distinguished Public Service Fellow at the School of Public Administration. If ever there was someone worthy of such a title, it is our guest this evening, the Honorable Dr. Mayann Francis. Proof of this is evidenced by the many other titles that have been bestowed upon her throughout the course of her career. They include her honor, which she earned as the first African Nova Scotian and second woman to serve as Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia. Doctor, as a recipient of an honorary doctorate in humane letters from Mount St. Vincent University, honorary Doctor of Civil Law from St. Mary's University, and an honorary Doctor of Law from York University. This in addition to having earned a Bachelor of Arts from St. Mary's University, a Master's in Public Administration from New York University, a certificate in Equal Opportunity Studies from Cornell University, and a certificate in Theological Studies from the Atlantic School of Theology. CEO, in her leadership role as the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. Ombudsman for the province of Nova Scotia, the first woman to hold this position. Chair of the Board of Governors for the Atlantic School of Theology. And the list goes on. For Dr. Francis has had a rich and varied career in public administration, human resources, and law. In each role, she has brought a unique perspective grounded in her faith, in her integrity, and her dedication to public service. In her new role with the School of Public Administration, Dr. Francis will have an opportunity to share her extensive knowledge of the public service with students and faculty alike. She will give guest lectures in Master of Public Administration classes, be available for one-on-one consultations, and write a memoir of her career. She will also offer leadership in the areas of greatest interest to her. And I have to say that the students and the faculty are very lucky to have her in their midst, and we are very lucky to have Dr. Francis share her story with us tonight. Please welcome the Honorable Dr. Mayann Francis, Order of Nova Scotia.
Good evening, and thank you, Tom, for that kind introduction. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure for me to be here this evening. I have come a long way from growing up in Sydney, Whitney Pier, an immigrant and working class community that helped shape who I am today. And I have a lot of wisdom to share from that journey. I hope you are all prepared to accept that wisdom, because it may not be so comfortable. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to acknowledge my ancestors and all those warriors who fought for equality and justice for Black people. It is their determination and fighting spirit that gives me the strength and courage to climb and to soar as they would want me to do. I stand on their shoulders. I also want to acknowledge our presence on the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Their resilience in the face of discrimination and the ability of their culture to remain strong in the presence of so many challenges have always inspired me in my work for equity and social justice. The late Maya Angelou was highly respected as a prolific writer, a poet, and storyteller. Her writings have influenced me in many ways. One of my favorite poems is her Still I Rise, because it speaks of an unyielding spirit of strength and courage. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in shame, I rise. I am a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I beard the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Whenever I read this poem, I'm reminded of the struggle faced by my ancestors. Slavery was one of the most frighteningly powerful and influential institutions that ever existed. It permeated every aspect of the life of countless generations of black men and women. So powerful was the institution that centuries later, the legacy it created still haunts black men and women here in Canada and throughout the diaspora. The oppressor succeeded in convincing the world that we were inferior, not to be trusted, and we were lazy. And unfortunately, as victims of oppression, some of us have unconsciously internalized these beliefs. These feelings can often cause us to turn our anger inward towards one another. The oppressor tied us together like animals because that's what they said we were. They took our children from us. They raped and beat our women. They made us betray one another. We were jammed into the hulls of ships and tied to one another like cattle. We crossed the ocean sick and afraid. We were beaten. We risked our lives to learn how to read and write because we knew even then that the power of education was something we wanted. Through these hardships and brutal treatment, many survive. It is their strength, the courage, ambition, and hope for the future that is the legacy of slavery I embrace to counter the darker, evil legacy of slavery. The impact of slavery, not only in the United States, but Canada as well, led to a society structured for the oppressor and the oppressed. In a speech former Senator Donald Oliver delivered at the Harry Jerome Awards in 2011, he had this to say: "In Canadian history books, there is little mention of the fact that slavery once existed in the territory that is now Canada. Most Canadians don't know that segregation was accepted in many parts of this country, including Nova Scotia, well into the 60s. He went on to say, they believe the myth of a Canadian tradition of tolerance because most history books gloss over the overt racism that has afflicted blacks in Canada throughout history. I will acknowledge that strides have been made. However, for the length of time African Canadians have lived in this country and province, the gains have been small. We are underrepresented in the boardrooms, the ranks of the federal, provincial, and municipal public service, in political office, senior levels in universities, the healthcare field, the media, the justice system, and I could go on and on. Why is it taken so long for African Canadians to break down the doors to full group success? There are individual successes, but unfortunately that critical mass has yet to be realized. I was determined to climb over those barriers of racism and discrimination along my career path. It was not easy. There were times I would go home, and yes, I would go home and I would cry. I wanted to give up. You see, the pain of racism and discrimination can eat away at your soul. But as long as my spirit was never broken and I leaned on my faith in God, I knew in my heart and mind I would succeed. I also knew with success came isolation. Was I prepared for this? I was fortunate to have many diverse mentors, godparents, who I describe as people behind the scenes in business or in government who recognize a talent within you and are quietly working behind the scenes promoting you in many ways. I had family and trusted close friends to offer their support at every step. A number of them are in this room tonight. I will not call them out. And I want to thank them for always being there for me. Their friendship and unwavering support is one of the greatest gifts I have ever received in my lifetime. When I was approached by Dalhousie to join the Faculty of Management School of Public Administration as their first distinguished public service fellow, I was surprised. Just as surprised when asked by the Prime Minister to be the 31st Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia in 2006. I was not certain what the long title meant, but after considerable reflection, prayers, and conversations with family and close friends about Dalhousie's proposal, I decided to move forward and accept the offer. When I was sworn in as Lieutenant Governor on September 7, 2006, one of the things I said in my installation speech was that I wanted my appointment to be seen as a sign of hope for anyone who believes they have been oppressed or denied opportunity. This is how I felt when I decided to take up the opportunity Dalhousie was offering. There is always a bit of fear when taking on something new and challenging. Don't be afraid to walk through an open door. I owe that to my ancestors who struggled to survive the brutal legacy of slavery, and I owe it to myself. What does public service mean? Often when we hear these words, we think about the formal organization of government. Public service, in my opinion, is a very broad term. My background is the foundation which propelled me along a journey that has been very public and devoted to service. As you know, I was born in Sydney, Whitney Pier, and I can't say that enough. I'm very proud. Sydney, Whitney Pier. My parents were immigrants. My father was Cuban, and my mom Antiguan. They first immigrated from their respective places of birth to New York City, where they met. My dad was a priest in the African Orthodox Church. Mom was considered the first lady of the church. We were financially poor, but very rich in many other ways. Both parents instilled in my siblings and me the importance of education. My mother did not have a high school education. This, however, did not stop her quest for learning. I recall how she took correspondence courses. I watched her studying and struggling to do homework. This impacted my strong belief in continuous lifelong learning. Both my parents were very much committed to community service. My mother made most of our clothes and started a sewing club for young girls. Not only did we learn how to sew, she taught us the value of teamwork, respect, accountability, excellence in our work, and the importance of believing in oneself. We paid dues, I think it was 5 cents, which were used to buy our materials. I'm assuming my mother submitted it as well. We were not permitted to be late for classes, which were held on a Monday evening after our regular school day. We also learned to pay attention to detail and respect each other's work. We were expected to complete our projects within the time frame my mom assigned. No negotiations. When my siblings and I outgrew our clothing, my mother would unceremoniously take them to families who were struggling. She chaired the women's auxiliary of our church, where they worked on church and community projects. My father played a key role by ensuring members in the community had sufficient food and decent housing. Because he spoke Spanish, he was often called upon to serve as a translator, especially for seafarers. He also settled community disputes. This diverse community of Whitney Pier had many churches. There was one synagogue. Our church was part of this religious community of many denominations. It was common for the priests, the ministers, and the rabbis to come together to discuss community concerns. When I reflect on this, I realize how influential these men were. They appeared to have a say in the criminal justice system and social services. I saw my father meet with white business owners in our community and beyond to insist that they hire Black people. This was long before human rights commissions, employment equity, and affirmative action. He saw an injustice and sought to make things right. Donald J. Savoy, in his book, What is Government Good For?, discusses the power of the parish priest in the lives of its members and their communities. Even though he is specifically speaking about the Roman Catholic Church, based on my personal experience and observations, I believe his analysis is applicable to diverse denominations and their specific communities. He also discusses how neighbors helped neighbors. The community involvement or public service activated by my parents and other members in the community became for me the norm. There were no government agencies to turn to for support. It was your neighbor or religious community you turned to for assistance. I remember politicians visiting our home and having long talks with my father. I was too young to understand their discussions or to know which political party they belonged to, but I recall my father telling my mom that he hoped the community would never be forgotten. He set an example for the community by demonstrating the importance of voting by always casting his vote and encouraging others to do the same. My parents were also involved in volunteer work. My father sat on boards, my mother and members of the Ladies Auxiliary canvassed for various charities such as United Way, known back then as United Appeal. Did watching my parents work in our community influence the direction my life would take? Did it affect my determination to live a life of public service? Could I possibly know that this life of public service would lead me later to become Lieutenant Governor, the top of the precedent list, the highest ranked person in Nova Scotia from 2006 to 2012? Lincoln Alexander was the first Black person to become Lieutenant Governor in Canada. In fact, Lincoln was one of the first people I called when I was sworn in, and Michael Jean was the first Black person to become Governor General of Canada. The three of us broke the color barrier for Black people by joining this elite and exclusive club once reserved for white males and eventually expanded to include white females. To paraphrase Maya Angelou's Still I Rise, the three of us are the dream and the hope of the slave. My journey into public service was indeed influenced by my parents, the community of Whitney Pier, and my faith. Our working class community was often referred to as the other side of the tracks. However, I like to think of my community as the community that gave birth to lawyers, judges, politicians, doctors, dentists, nurses, teachers, secretaries, Order of Canada recipients, engineers, tradespeople, religious leaders, bureaucrats, and many other professionals. Great to come from the other side of the tracks. We were not a perfect community, and we had our challenges. Many of us choose to rise above those challenges and thrive. Education for most families was non-negotiable. Parents wanted their children to have a better life. They saw education and excellence in education as the key to success. For as long as I can remember, I felt the need to serve and help people. I did not always know what form this would take. In my early professional career, I was trained as an X-ray technologist and worked in Canada and the United States. My volunteer work, both with nonprofit organizations and church organizations, added to my work in public service, both at home and abroad. After graduating from St. Mary's University, I became a human rights officer with the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. Little did I know that many years later I would become the director and CEO of the organization, where I received my first experience working on social justice issues. When I was appointed director and CEO in 1999, I came to the position with the mandate to create change in the organization. A cultural shift was needed within the commission. We had to be more focused on the people we were there to serve, and that was the public. I had to guide the commission to expand its gaze beyond reactive work to work that anticipated the change happening around us. By making this shift, it was hoped that the commission would become an agent of positive change within Nova Scotia. It seemed a mandate for change was always part of my challenge in my public sector career. It was there when I assumed the roles of Ombudsman for Nova Scotia, an Assistant Deputy Minister in Ontario. Being an agent of change and a Black woman responsible for change presented its own challenges, which I had to manage. Working as administrative manager with the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office and my work in the New York Corporation Counsel's Office in Human Resources collectively contributed to my knowledge of how to be that agent of change. I cannot underestimate the valuable lessons and skills I acquired working in private industry as a paralegal on Wall Street and Midtown Manhattan. Working in the corporate world was rewarding. It was a great learning environment which prepared me for the many doors I would eventually pass through as a Black woman. There were countless mentors, Black, white, Jewish, Hispanic, male, female, Democratic, and yes, Republican. Each person contributed to my growth and understanding of the people, the role of leadership, and the world of work. They taught me the value of discernment, how important it was, they said, to think before revealing your thoughts. I guess Trump missed that something. These lessons, along with my education and continuous quest for knowledge, helped chart the course for my journey. The expectations placed on me in a private industry helped prepare me for both a rocky terrain and a smooth landing. One of the most difficult but rewarding lessons I learned throughout my career was to frequently perform critical self-analysis. Everyone, especially leaders, must take time to do this. In 2005, I penned an article in the Chronicle Herald titled, "Answering the Call to Service." I stated that people often describe their vocation as a calling, but when you ask to describe what it was like to be called to serve, not surprisingly, it was difficult for them to explain. There was no revelation like Saul on his way to Damascus. Neither was there a bolt of lightning. Instead, there was a deep feeling of knowing, supported by prayer, reflection, and conversation with family, friends, and spiritual advisors. Regardless if one is called to serve in a religious or a spiritual institution or public office, making such an important decision requires introspection, a measure of faith, and again, consultation. Once the decision is made to answer the call to serve, those we serve will expect us to uphold moral and ethical standards. As a graduate of the Atlantic School of Theology, I learned a valuable lesson. For me, spiritual leadership combined with responsible leadership is a dynamic duality. The public expect leaders, whether they are in politics, government bureaucracy, community positions, or spiritual communities, to have integrity built upon a solid foundation rooted in the principles of accountability, transparency, and honesty. In the final analysis, religious leaders, public servants, elected officials, or citizens serving the public must remember that we all live in glass houses. Curtains cannot cover the obligation placed upon us. In the book, Only to Serve, a collection of speeches delivered by George Vanier, the 19th Governor General of Canada, a speech given by him during his presentation of the Vanier Medal of the Institute of Public Administration in Canada in 1964 speaks to this, and I quote, "For leaders of a profession are those who fashion its greatness to their example of service and integrity even more than to their accomplishments. People look for the criteria of ethical and moral conduct that will guide other members of the calling and often the community as well. The standard of the leaders are therefore of crucial importance to the healthy survival of the entire community." As someone whose life has been rooted in public service as a bureaucrat, volunteer, healthcare professional, and writer, my focus has always been on people. How can I best position myself to have a positive influence on people, especially our youth? Because I have been the benefactor of people who mentored me along my journey in the United States and Canada, I believe I have a duty to pay it forward. I will digress here for a minute and share a personal story with you. My undergraduate degree at St. Mary's University was about 98% paid for by a benefactor who never wanted his name revealed. He has since died, and I started a quest to find his family because I thought they should know. There were two stipulations he placed on giving the money: keep his name quiet and pay it forward. I fortunately had a great Christmas gift and found his son. His son and I had a very long conversation on the phone, and I still can't tell you his name. And the son jokingly said, "I wonder where all that money went to." I wasn't the only one. There were many others that he helped. I was not the only person. And he kept tabs on some of them and know the good things they were doing, and he always looked to make sure they were paying it forward. So he felt I honored the obligation that was placed on me. Working as a bureaucrat at a senior level, by the way, he was a Cape Breton. Working as a bureaucrat at a senior level is not easy. Being a black woman or a black male adds to the challenge. Being a black woman, and frequently the first black person to perform certain roles, presented the challenge of being judged not only as an individual, but also as a proxy for all black men and women. Being a Black manager of a diverse workforce or an all-white workforce requires intelligence, a solid education and work experience, patience, courage, and strength. You also have to find the correct balance for managing the workforce. Otherwise, white employees will believe you are favoring the visible minorities, or the racial minority staff will accuse you of ignoring them and accuse you of forgetting you are Black. I know because I have been on the receiving end of these kinds of criticisms. I recall being the manager of a strong, intelligent Black woman. She articulated her words slowly and carefully. She was passionate. And when she believed in a particular cause, the fire burning inside her was visible. During a meeting where she and I were the only Black people in attendance, she demonstrated her passion for the issue being discussed, which was violence against women, which was her passion. She was very deliberate, demonstrative in her presentation. We thought the meeting went well. Later, I received a call from a deputy minister informing me that people felt threatened and were afraid for their safety following that meeting. I asked, were we at the same meeting? You see, my employee fit the stereotype of an angry Black woman. After all, we are loud, angry, difficult to work with, and pushy. The present First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, has been characterized with some of these adjectives. In an address to the graduating class of Tuskegee University in Alabama last summer, she said this. She said she was subjected to a different set of expectations on the campaign trail in 2008 compared with other candidates' spouses. What kind of First Lady would I be? What kinds of issues would I take on? The truth is, she said, those same questions would have been posed to any candidate's spouses. But as potentially the first African American First Lady, I was also the focus of another set of questions and speculations. Conversations sometimes rooted in fears and misconception of others. Was I too loud, or too angry, or too emasculating? Reactions to us as Black women are rooted in the conscious or unconscious stereotypes that can be traced back to the days of slavery. Once we are labeled and our career aspirations might become stalled. When I was Lieutenant Governor and hosting my first receiving line, a man came through the line, shook my hand, and without even a smile, said, "We always had good lieutenant governors. I hope you will be good too." Boom, he was gone. So I smiled, as any lieutenant governor would do. Becoming lieutenant governor was the highlight of my very public service. When I was asked to serve by the former prime minister and appointed by the former Governor General Michael Jean, the enormity of the responsibility being placed on my shoulders overwhelmed me. When I was a child, you see, I had a fascination with the monarchy and have held it in awe since then. On December the 17th, 1999, at a party with friends, our host asked us to write down our wish for the 21st century. He would place them in a sealed envelope and deliver them to us in 10 years. He delivered mine on New Year's Eve, 2009. And this is what I wrote. That I would be able to motivate people to positive action through my motivational talks. That people celebrate and embrace differences. That peace and love win over hate. Listen carefully. As Lieutenant Governor for the province of Nova Scotia, my positive actions and my determination to build Nova Scotia as a model province was realized. 3 years before, on September the 7th, 2006, I was sworn in as the 31st Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia. You can imagine my surprise when I opened my envelope in Government House in 2009, I did not remember what I had written. So from then on, some friends would go, The role of Lieutenant Governor is a call to service, which must not be entered into lightly. Instead, it should be approached soberly by appreciating the dignity and honor which the role requires. Its historical significance, constitutional prerogative, and public importance must never be compromised either by partisan appearance or actions. I pledged in my installation speech to always serve to the best of my abilities and uphold the respect which the office deserves. Obviously, the man who questioned me whether I would be good in the role either did not hear my installation speech or he has serious doubts that a Black person could perform this role with dignity and honor. The role of Lieutenant Governor is more than just ceremonial. It is intrinsically tied to the tradition of responsible government in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia witnessed the birth of responsible government in Canada during the 19th century. Joseph Howe, one of my predecessors, spoke passionately in favor of the notion of responsible government. He understood the importance of the relationship between the various branches of government, executive, legislative, and judiciary. The office of the Lieutenant Governor brings to bear moral influence and a desire to prevent harm to our system of government. I understood the constitutional responsibility of the Crown. For that reason, not being a constitutional expert and recognizing that I was taken on this role during a time when Nova Scotia had a minority government, I sought guidance and brought together a team of people to share their knowledge and experience with me. One person on that team was the late Dr. Peter O'Coin of Dalhousie School of Public Administration. This group was not there to advise me, as the only advisor to a vice-regal representative is the Prime Minister of the Governor General, Prime Minister for the Governor General, or Premier for Lieutenant Governor. Instead, I wanted them to share with me their knowledge of various scenarios I might face with a minority government in power. It was valuable experience that taught me a great deal about our Constitution and system of government. The influence of my parents and my childhood found its way into my focus as the vice-regal representative. Dr. Cecil Foster, a noted author and professor, penned a column in 2006 about my appointment. He invoked the spirits of many African ancestors and my parents and pointed out that my name was a variant on Mayann, which in African Orthodoxy is sometimes referred to as the mother of the nation, which he considered a prophetic choice by my parents. He was certain that all those spirits would gather at my swearing in to express their joy and blessing at my new role, symbolically representing the mother and sovereign of Commonwealth, including all those nations in Africa and the Caribbean, end of quote. My concern for community has been part of every aspect of my career and personal journey, whether it is my work as a senior public servant, my volunteer efforts with service organizations, my articles as a newspaper columnist, or my recent children's book, Mayann's Train Ride. Community has always been at the heart of my goals. I truly believe that healthy communities are vital to the economic well-being of our province. One of the programs I established as Lieutenant Governor, and which is still in existence today, is the recognition of healthy communities through a Community Spirit Award. I was inspired to create the award by my experiences growing up in Sydney Whitney Pier, where I witnessed the power of caring and welcoming communities to affect the lives of their citizens. The award acknowledges that those Nova Scotian communities that live that example and showcases their accomplishments in order to inspire other communities in all parts of our province. From Whitney Pier to the halls of Halifax Infirmary, from Lenox Hill Hospital to health clinics in Spanish Harlem, and Coney Island as an X-ray technologist, from the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office and New York City Corporation Counsel Office in Human Resources, to Wall Street and Avenue of the Americas as a corporate paralegal, to Employment Equity Officer at Dalhousie University, from Assistant Deputy Minister in Ontario to Director and CEO of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, and to Ombudsman of Nova Scotia, and the pinnacle of my career, the Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia. What are the lessons I take away from this success? For me, it always starts with giving thanks to God for the blessings I have received in my life. And I am not talking about material blessings of wealth or possessions. I am talking about the gifts of family and friends, strength to overcome barriers, and the gift of peace of mind in knowing that I have always strived to do my very best, no matter what challenges place before me. Then there is the lesson that my dear mother instilled in me as a child growing up in Whitney Pier. Get the best education possible and never stop learning. I have tried to live her example every day, and she is never far from my thoughts and my heart. There are lessons my father taught me through his example of service to his community and fellow human beings. Namely, if you want to be successful, it not only requires hard work, but it requires tremendous sacrifice. For each person has to decide for himself or herself how much they are willing to sacrifice. He showed me the importance of always practicing humility and living by the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's pretty straightforward advice that will serve you well in any situation. My upbringing in Whitney Pier and the experiences of my life have taught me to let education, formal or informal, be your best friend. Respect yourself and others. Conquer your fears. Do not be afraid to ask for help. I have learned the importance of keeping a small circle of advisors who are credible and trustworthy. Surround yourself with people who are creative and can think outside of the box, because they will inspire you and help you break out of the mold of the tired and true in order to reach your excellence. Do not get stuck in the mindset of being a victim. Acknowledge the barriers you face, but do not let them rule your thinking or your life. Be proud of who you are. Seek out your allies. Keep hope alive. Find your mentors and role models and absorb the inspiration and strength they provide. Know who your godparents are. Do not be afraid to embrace change. Always keep your CV ready. Learn to write and communicate well. Many careers have faltered because these skills were lacking. Every 2 to 5 years, write a strategy for your life. Align yourself with positive people. Trust in your own abilities. Accept constructive criticism. Know when to stand up and to sit down. Embrace diversity, especially if you are in public service, where what you do makes a difference in the lives of so many people. I have spent a lifetime working to tear down the barriers of racism and discrimination, and there is still a lifetime of work to do in this area. Be aware of your environment at all times without being paranoid. Keep your friends close, and yes, your enemies even closer. Never forget who you are or where you came from. I hold my home of Whitney Pier close in my heart at all times, and the experiences of my ancestors are always in my mind and inspiring me to overcome difficulties when challenges are facing me. Never allow anyone to break your spirit or self-esteem. Take time to look inside yourself and do not be afraid to reinvent yourself. Remember David Bowie? Pay your success forward in whatever way you choose. Remove envy from your heart. Do not discount any of your work experiences. Know when it is time to leave and find new opportunities. Understand what it means to be compassionate, caring, and welcoming. Embrace technology, but respect and understand how it can impact your life in both positive and negative ways. And never let it replace the joy of human contact. Life is not easy, because like the song says, we were never promised a rose garden. My journey has been challenging and difficult, but it has never been insurmountable. I have lost friends, and I've mourned many friends. And as I said earlier, success can also bring isolation. Remember that not everyone who smiles with you is for you. Always keep your wits about you and be aware and always alert. Regardless of who you are, you will be faced with issues that you may wish you did not have to deal with. It could be health issues, employment, family matters, financial problems, doubts about your own abilities. With determination and faith, I believe you can prevail. We are placed on this earth for a reason. We all have a purpose. For some of us, it is more public purpose. When you realize your purpose in this life, do not be afraid to embrace it and move forward with confidence. I had fun along the way. I've met many beautiful people, and some not so beautiful. But there's a learning experience in everything. As the Distinguished Public Service Fellow, an author, and chair of the Atlantic School of Theology, from Whitney Pier, my journey continues. Thank you for being here this evening.